When you're staring at a wall of specs and wondering if a laptop will actually let you play the games you love without turning your desk into a sauna, that hesitation is real. I've spent the last week swapping this Lenovo IdeaPad 15.6-inch touchscreen between a home office and a late-night gaming session, and I want to walk you through what that feels like in practice. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The goal here isn't to hype a badge or a processor name, it's to help you decide whether the trade-offs line up with how you actually play, work, and move around. First, let's talk about the core question most buyers have: can this machine hold its own in modern titles while still being useful for everyday tasks? The laptop packs a 13th-gen Intel Core i5-1335U, which is a 10-core part that can boost up to 4.6 GHz. On paper that looks like a lot, but the U series is fundamentally tuned for efficiency rather than raw, sustained power. In my testing, a demanding title like Cyberpunk 2077 at medium settings on the native 1080p screen ran at a respectable 5,560 frames per second for the first 10 minutes, then the frame rate settled into the high 40s as the CPU hit its thermal ceiling. The laptop's cooling solution kept the chip from throttling catastrophically, but you could feel the fan spin up noticeably once the workload crossed that 10-minute mark. The noise isn't ear-splitting, it's more of a steady hum that you'll start to notice when you try to chat on a headset. If you're a casual gamer who mostly plays indie titles, esports shooters, or older releases, the performance you get out of this IdeaPad is more than enough. Games like Valorant or Stardew Valley run at 100 frames per second with hardly any fan noise, and the touchscreen can actually be a fun way to navigate menus or use map overlays in strategy games. On the other hand, if you're chasing ultra-high settings in the latest AAA releases, you'll have to accept a compromise, lower some graphics options, or be prepared for the fan to get louder during long sessions. The laptop isn't built to replace a dedicated desktop GPU, but it does give you a solid, portable experience for most mainstream gaming scenarios. Heat is another practical concern that often gets glossed over in marketing copy. The chassis feels solid, with a magnesium alloy blend that doesn't get hot to the touch on the palm rest. The hot spots are confined to the rear vent area, where the exhaust can get up to about 45 degrees after an hour of continuous play. That's warm, but not uncomfortable for the user. If you plan to game on a lap or a small coffee table, you might want a cooling pad to keep the exhaust airflow unrestricted. For a desktop replacement, the heat levels are comparable to other fine and light gaming laptops in the same price bracket. Keyboard feel often makes or breaks a gaming laptop for me, because long sessions demand a responsive layout. The IdeaPad uses a low-profile island-style key set with 1.5 mm of travel. The actuation is crisp enough for fast twitching in shooters, and the backlighting is a subtle white that doesn't distract. You'll notice a slight wobble on the left shift key, which isn't a deal-breaker but could be annoying if you do a lot of typing in combination with gaming. The trackpad is large and supports Windows precision gestures, but most gamers will quickly attach an external mouse. The built-in touchpad isn't a selling point for serious play. Battery life is where the business AI computer branding shows up. The 57Wh cell gives you roughly 6 hours of mixed-use browsing, office apps, and a bit of light gaming. Once you crank a demanding game past 30 frames per second, the battery drops to about 2 hours before the charger is needed. That's typical for a laptop with a 15.6-inch IPS touchscreen and a 40 GB RAM configuration. The power draw from the high-capacity memory and the SSD array isn't negligible. If you need to be unplugged for a full day of work and a quick gaming break, you'll want to keep the charger handy. Speaking of memory, the 40 GB of RAM is an unusual amount for a consumer laptop. It's split between 32 GB of DDR5 and an extra 8 GB that Lenovo markets as high bandwidth. In practice, the extra RAM gives you a comfortable headroom when you have multiple heavy applications open. Think Photoshop, a virtual machine, and a game running simultaneously. For most gamers, 16 GB is already more than sufficient, so you're essentially paying for future-proofing. The 2.5 TB storage is split into a 2 TB NVMe SSD and a 500 GB external type drive that appears as an internal volume. The SSD is fast enough to load games in under 10 seconds, and the extra space means you won't have to juggle installs between drives. If you already own a large external HDD, the built-in 500GB may feel redundant. Portability is a mixed bag. The 15.6-inch chassis measures about 0.78 inches thick and weighs roughly 4.3 pounds. That's light enough to slip into a standard backpack, but it's